Welcome to the REI Diamond Interview, your source for real estate investment jewels of wisdom with Dan Breslin.
Welcome to the REI Diamonds podcast episode number 34 with Meara on how to wholesale short sales, a new way of getting them done. I'm Dan Breslin, and on the REI Diamonds podcast, I invite world-class guests to share their valuable experience as it relates to real estate investing. You're about to hear real-world experience from Brian on strategies he is using right now in today's market to make money with short sales. If you're not driving, I suggest you grab a pen and a paper because I'm sure you'll want to take notes. I know I'm ready. Welcome to the show, Brian.
What's up, Dan? How are you?
I am well. And yourself?
Doing great, man. Doing great.
Cool. So, Brian, I'm pretty sure we knew some of the same people, and you used to come over to Bridge some of the same networking events back in 06, 07. Am I correct?
Yep, absolutely.
I remember meeting you when you were just getting started. Like, when I looked at the pictures after we had talked on your blog, oh, yeah, I remember meeting this guy. And it was like, long before you became the king of short sales and all that.
Yeah.
So that was pretty cool. I came to that realization. I was like, all right, cool. So, there we were both getting started back in, 05, 06, 07. So why don't you go ahead and share how you did get started and kind of where your business is at now and how it got to that point, Brian?
Sure. Yeah, actually, for me, it was 2007, and I was just coming off a divorce, and I really needed a way to make some money. And at the time, it seemed like anybody, could be an order taker and go out and sell some real estate. So I went out and got my real estate license. Right away, I was kind of thrown into the fire with short sales, and I was introduced to some investors, local investors, and that's how I started coming over to Bridge. And as you mentioned, coming to Jersey and from Bucks County, Philadelphia area where I live, and just started really immersing myself in the world of real estate, but specifically short sales because they were popping up everywhere. And how I actually personally got involved initially was just as an agent. And the way it happened was actually kind of funny. There was an inter-office email that came out through the intranet through Keller Williams, where I still have my license, by the way, in both states, PA and Jersey. But anyway, so this email comes out, and it's for a quote, free listing, or, whoever wants a listing, respond to this email. And I ignored it and didn't think much of it. And then it came out again, and I didn't think much of it. No, actually, that's not true. What I did think is, man, that's kind of strange. Why would, here I am, just got my license. I'm just getting started. I have no business, no contacts. How do I begin marketing? I have no money. So I have no money to really put together these mailing campaigns and all these things are teaching you to do postcards and this and that and the other. So I'm thinking, all right, well, how the hell do I get started here? I have no money. And, the goal is to get some listings and work with some buyers, right? And here's someone giving away a listing. So when it came out the third time, I said, I'll take it. So I went and, I accepted it. I took the listing. Now, looking back, it's funny because I probably should have been smart enough to realize that in an office with 200 agents, there's a reason everybody passed it up. You know what I'm saying? Nobody wanted a short sale. Well, I was just too dumb to know why. And obviously the reason is because they're perceived to be, and in fact, they are a lot of work if you don't know what you're doing. And they can be very cumbersome. And, we're going back, God, I can't believe coming up on 2016. So we're talking 9 years ago. And, they were very different back then, very different from how they are today. And I'm sure we'll get into that. We'll talk about some of the changes, specifically the most recent changes. I can tell you this, though, Dan. I can tell you that I did get that deal closed. It took me 9 months. I got it done. And we got paid on it, which was good. Now, I only got my real estate commission. And I say only because that's kind of what, that first deal and many, many other deals, because really what happened from there is I realized that very few people knew what they were talking about with short sales. And if I was, I guess, just smart enough to know that I was stupid and didn't know anything about short sales, but frankly, nobody else did either. So I figured, well, if I could kind of master this thing here and really become good at it, I'd be one of the few people that knew, what they were doing. So I really started studying, and I started going on webinars, and, all these gurus having these webinars, and, you do this, you can do that, and trainings and YouTube videos, and you name it, man. I was just really searching that information. And probably one of those investor REIA groups is how we initially met and how you remember meeting me. I was there again, seeking out information, okay? Now, it's funny because I started doing many, many deals in short sales as an agent, primarily as a listing agent. And what happened was I started working with some of these investors. A couple of them actually that I met at some of those local REIA groups you were talking about where we met. And one thing after the other, I started attending closings, of course, And it didn't take me long to realize, Dan, that, here I am, me, my team. At the time, I was negotiating all my own deals. I think I ran an ad on Craigslist. I got a negotiator to do some negotiating for me as an independent contractor, and started building a little team. That's when I got my first assistant, and had a nice little operation going. But what would happen is I would show up to the closing table, man, and, let's just say a $200,000 house, and I get my commission, before the broker cut of 3%. Well, that's $6,000. And I'm at the closing, and the guy, the investor, just flipped the deal in front of me, would go in one room and close it, walk in the other room, close it, meaning buy it here, walk into the next room and sell it, and make $60,000. And I made $6,000, and I did all the work. And I'm thinking, man, I'm on the wrong side of the fence here, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, I gotta become the investor. That's where I'm missing. And so I really started looking into becoming the investor, and how can I flip these deals, and how can I, do these things they're doing with the land trust and the assignment of beneficial interest and all the things that were popular back then. And so I just became, completely obsessed with studying and again, searching on information, and I'm sure a lot of people have been there, even today when people are, looking to make a change to their real estate investing and add a new, let's just say, arrow to their quiver, or a brand new person, someone just looking to get started. That's a point that I can relate to so much, Dan, because it's a very frustrating place to be. You don't know what to do. You don't know who to listen to. You don't know who to trust. And you want to get involved. You want to make money in real estate. Who doesn't, right? But you just don't know where to begin. So, I found myself, I see today still people find themselves in this eternal, it seems, loop of just getting information and getting ready to get ready. And they're on this webinar and that webinar and this training and that training, but they never really get going. They never really go anywhere. And so you ask them, well, how long have you been investing? Well, I'm just kind of getting started. But they've said that for the last year or 2 years or 5 years, and they've never done a deal. Or maybe they did one deal. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm sure you've run into that, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Right. And how do I know? Well, been there, done that. I can raise my hand. So one day, I just said, look, for me, it was common sense, Dan. I said, I've already done, at that point, a bunch of short sales. Now I'm fast forwarding to 2009. So 2 years into this, I've done a lot as an agent. I mean, a real lot. And so I realized, all right, well, this is kind of what I've gotten good at, and I kind of know this inside and out. So let me pick a guru who seems to be really good at short sales. And I went back to, I kept going back to Nathan Jurowitz and Chris McLaughlin, who at the time had a product called Short Sales Riches. And so I bought it, and I studied it like, I said, this is my Bible, man. And this is the word for me. And I went through every page, and I studied it, and I made a blog. And I never did any type of blogging before, but I saw this guy online who bought the course like I did, the Short Sales Riches, and he said, I'm going to challenge myself, and I'm going to put a video up every day for 120 days talking about what I did. And I sat back and I said, oh, man, what a great idea. I can actually make a video every day as I'm studying this. I've never done this before, so I don't know really if it's going to work for me or not, but I can chronicle the whole thing for the world to see, putting up a video on YouTube and blasting it everywhere. And if nothing else, I could hold myself accountable. And I figured, well, if I had to make a video every day, it would kind of force me to actually do something that day because I would need something to talk about. You know what I'm saying? So I did it. I literally made a video every day for 120 days, no experience blogging, no experience no email list, no social contact, nothing, man. I mean, that's when I created my Facebook account. I had 3 friends. You start with none, right? And so I just started doing it. And what happened was, looking back now we're talking, I started that May 1st, 2009. So 6.5, what is that? Yeah, I guess 6.5 years ago. I'll tell you what, man, that was the start of everything. Because I created a momentum there that never stopped. I created a work habit that never stopped. And I created a network, which just has grown and blown up exponentially since then, okay? But it started with the base of work and actually doing deals. So that's kind of my story, man, and that's how I got involved in short sales, and that's kind of how I got involved as an investor, and that's pretty much it. So I know that was a long-winded answer to your question, but that kind of set the frame for you?
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to point out, because I get a chance, I mean, this is one of my favorite things about doing this podcast, is I get a chance to speak with, spend time with, anywhere from a half hour to an hour, hour and a half with some of the most successful people in a variety of different real estate markets throughout the country. And one of the common things that I noticed, and that I noticed with what you shared as well, was making the decision. You didn't quite articulate it the same way, but I noticed you made the decision to study and master this one specific topic of short sales. And then you you found different programs, and this became your Bible, and you're watching YouTube videos. And one of the things I noticed with unsuccessful people is there's never a decision to master one niche, right? So, like, take the example of a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon. This guy, whoever's operating, and he's the best heart surgeon in the country, that guy's not operating on the brain. He's not doing, restructuring of the skeletal something in the knee. I mean, I'm not like a doctor, so I don't really know the analogy, but the guys who get to the top of the field in whatever they're doing, they specialize in this one specific type. An example, lawyers. Lawyers are the jack of all trade lawyers, not necessarily going to be the wealthiest, but the lawyer who's doing personal injury and strictly sticking to that niche, becoming a master of that and deciding to study and become good at that. These are the most successful people that rise to the top of the field, and I think that that's something that you had made the decision and done that with short sales. So, Brian, how many short sales have you completed, and how many short sales are you currently working on? How many are going to go to settlement, this coming month, 2 months that you're looking forward to, so we can get an idea, like, where your business was and where it's at now?
Well, it's funny you mention that, because getting back to, the decision, it absolutely, just to confirm what you said, it was a decision. It was a decision to push aside all of the clutter, because I was going on, and not, here's the funny thing about these guru webinars too. I mean, I was not just going on them, I was buying their stuff. So, I started amassing and frankly going further into debt, buying this course, that course, this course, that course. And so before I knew it, I had all these courses I bought. Some of them back then, they were actually shipping physical boxes of CDs and DVDs to you. At the time, there were just a lot of them starting to get, download only. But the point is, I had to push aside everything and just make the decision to focus on one discipline. So absolutely, you're 100% right. And it was a decision. I made it when I was in Italy. So I said, I'm not even waiting until I get back. I'm starting today, rolling the cameras May 1st. And it was a very specific decision I made. So, just to confirm what you said, 100%. So one of the things that Nathan, the guy who wrote that course at the time, was so proud of is that he had 100 deals in his pipeline. And to me, that just seemed like a mountain that was huge, man, and just something that, wow, can you imagine having 100 deals in your pipeline? I mean, because at that point with short sales, even if a huge amount fell through and this went to auction and this, that, the other, that's a lot of deals, right? And so I got there. It took me about 6 months, but I got 100 deals in my pipeline, and probably until about 2 years ago, for years, 3-4 years, we ran over 100 deals in our pipeline, closing 5, 10, 15 deals every month. Now, what happened was, I would say around a year and a half ago, starting probably about 2 years ago, Dan, short sales, as the economy started getting better, as appreciation across the country started increasing and housing, the values were going up, so the negative equity was diminishing, what happened was there was fewer and fewer short sales. And so kind of like I saw back in 2010, people started getting out of the business. Well, they got out of the business, which I'll talk about here in a second, in 2010 for a completely different reason, which was regulation, and didn't know what to do. But now, and over the last 2 years, I've seen people getting out of the short sale business, frankly, because there just aren't as many. So right now we have 36, 37 deals in our pipeline. A few months ago, that was down to 12. Okay, but I've moved on. I do other things now as far as we invest in non-performing notes and larger commercial deals. There's different things I've evolved into, but I've always maintained short sales. And like I said, they've again, I went from 12 to around triple that, and we have about 6 more deals we're looking at right now. We'll probably take a good 4 or 5 of them. So I'll be up over 40 probably by next week. But see, I'm not looking to ever have 100 short sales in my pipeline again. I only have the deals that I specifically want to work, and I'm very, very picky about them. Because there's fewer of them, Dan, you have to be more selective in the ones that you take. So we're a little bit tighter on our parameters as far as our qualifications. But, we've always, at a minimum, closed 1, 2, 3 every month. I mean, maybe in the last, since I got started 6 years, I can count on one hand the number of months that went by that we didn't close any deals, like goose egg, 0. But we would always tend to catch up. So if you drop down to 0, next month we might pop out 7, 8, 9 of them when we were rolling strong. But right now, I'd say we average about 1, 2, 3 per month. So 24, 30 a year at this current pace on short sales. Now, how we're doing them and how we're accomplishing them, as you mentioned at the very beginning of this call, has completely changed, okay? Because, as I mentioned, when I first got started, there was people doing, the majority of people investing in short sales were using a land trust, and they were doing an assignment of beneficial interest, which was the way to go back then. And that was, getting back to 2007, and I guess they were doing that a few years prior. Well, it seems like just when I was ready to get going, in 2008, 2009, get things going, what happened was, I'll never forget, a report came out from a very well-respected guy called The Death of the Land Trust. Okay, Greg Clement put that out. And I said to myself, oh, man, like, are you kidding me? And because that model that was working went away because people were committing fraud and title companies didn't want to do the deals that way anymore. So everybody started using an option contract and doing the A to B, B to C, simultaneous or double close, which was kind of what I was thrown into. Now, fast forwarding to 2010, so a year into my business, Dan, when I really, after I made that decision that we were talking about, when I had the 100 deals in the pipeline, closing 5, 10 deals a month, and everything was wonderful, right? Things changed. And my world almost fell apart overnight. Because what happened, another defining moment looking back, was that Bank of America, which back then was called Countrywide, started issuing an approval letter. And I'll never forget, it was the infamous bullet point number 10, literally on the approval letter, number 10 in the line. It said that you basically had to hold the property for 30 days before you resold it. Well, at the time, you have to understand, everybody was doing the deal, A to B, B to C, buy and sell on the same day. So people using what's called transactional funding or dough for a day was fine because you only needed the money for a day. Now all of a sudden you need to start carrying all this money for 30 days and not waiting 31 days. Well, that pushed I don't want to say a huge part, almost everybody out of the business. Because unless you were extremely liquid, you weren't going to have anywhere near the funds to be actually taking possession, using money, buying those properties, and holding them for a month. And good luck finding some hard money lender to lend you the money for a month when a lot of times, they didn't know if that end buyer was still going to be sticking around. You see what I'm saying? And I don't know how involved you were with them back then, but that was a huge, huge shakeout what happened in 2010. So, like I said, man, here I am, the proverbial, fork in the road. What the hell do I do? I mean, I built my entire life starting to finally see some success around this business with short sales, and now it seems like everything's literally about to fall apart. So what I had to do is make a decision. Again, am I just going to pack up shop and go do something else, or am I going to figure out a way around this? And so we did figure out a way around it. And I really sought out some of the best people in the country, some of the best legal minds, partnered up with some of the best people, and created a way to basically wholesale short sales so that you did not have to buy them, so that you didn't have to worry about getting the money and holding it for 30 days, which, by the way, shortly thereafter, everyone started seeing approval letters where you were being required to hold the property for 60, 90, even 120 days. So before you could resell it. And again, we created a legal process in which we could wholesale the deal. A little complicated for the average person who has no idea what they're doing, but we really refined it. So it's a very simple process to wholesale the short sale. And so that allowed many people to kind of get back in the game. And this was, I guess, back in 2010, 11 is when we were kind of doing all the testing behind the scenes, to the point where it started working so good that I created a product and started selling that in 2012 nationwide, teaching other investors how to do this and how to get back in the game of short sales.
So what exactly, if you could just spell it out in simple terms, how do you go about, we had the land trust back in 2006, 2007, and then we had the double closings, that disappeared in 2012. What's the simple process for, selling the next guy the deal?
Basically,
let's talk about two things on that too, Brian.
Sure.
If we could cover it, who is the ideal buyer for the short sale? What price point is that happening at? And how are you collecting the assignment fee? What type of paperwork is going to take place at, I guess, the single or double closing, or however you structured this? Can you kind of go through that entire process?
Yeah, very easily, absolutely. So basically what we do is, to answer your questions, number one, as in any real estate transaction, the best buyer is a cash buyer. And I think we could all agree upon that. Anytime someone doesn't need to get a mortgage, they're the best kind of buyer you can have. Now, can we work with people with mortgages? Absolutely. That's not a problem. There's a few more layers of the complication there, specifically depending on the type of financing they're getting. The worst case scenario would be the FHA buyer, because not only are they getting a mortgage, they have virtually no money to put down, and, they're a very fragile buyer, like we'd like to say. But we can work with them as well. So, in order of preference, it would go cash, conventional, FHA. As far as a price point, again, we've done everything from a $12,000 house in the ghetto of Trenton to, I think one of the biggest was $2.3 million I did in Virginia. So all ranges are in there. So there's really no magical point. But what I can tell you, getting back to the cash, is that generally for the areas that are 100,000 and less is where you find a large percentage of cash buyers. And again, with cash being, one of the ideal situations, that would be ideal. So to answer your question, 100,000 or less in cash would be ideal. But for the most part, we can and have done every range under the sun. All right. Now, how would that specifically work? Well, the investor goes in to buy the property, and you go under contract. And by the way, we've taught a system which, looking back, one of the other problems or situations that complicated or muddied the water with a lot of investing models and different things was all this, quote, special paperwork, right? And these special this and special that and option contracts and vanilla contracts and stealth contracts and, land trusts and assigning beneficial interest. And things that, unless you're really understanding these things, they can become very complicated very quick. And what happens is, a confused mind doesn't buy, right? And a confused mind, whether even an agent, won't buy, meaning they don't want to work with you as an investor. So we had to come up with a way to keep everything, really simple and ridiculously simple. So we use any contract that the agent, for whatever state they're in, is already using. So if it's Pennsylvania, we're using the PAR form. If it's in New Jersey, the NJR, the standard form, standard agreement of sale, purchase and sales agreement, whatever your state calls it, that's what we use with a simple 3-page addendum. Now, what this addendum does is it grants the investor an equitable interest in the property. An equitable interest is not an ownership interest. We're not messing with their deed. We're not doing anything like that. It's simply giving us a controlling interest in the property, basically allowing us, through the help of a licensed real estate agent, okay, very key, very important point there, through the help of a licensed real estate agent, to market the property for sale prior to taking ownership, all right? Now, that is a thing of value. That has a worth to it. So we go in as the buyer. We have a simple 3-page addendum, which, by the way, we send to the bank, the servicer, for full disclosure, and away we go. Now, the bank generally, let's just say 2-3 months later, after they've done their appraisal or BPO, they come back with, after some negotiating back and forth, they're willing to sell us that house, let's just say, for $150,000, all right? Well, we were trying to get it for $120. We were trying to get it for $110 or $100 or whatever. We were going to put a little work into it. We're going to, ride out any potential hold periods and resell it for a profit, make 40, 50 grand, 30 grand, whatever the case may be. Well, they didn't play ball. And so now they want $150,000. Well, yeah, all fixed up. I might have been able to sell it for $180, all right? But now to kind of wholesale it out, if you will, which is getting back to the point, I know I can get rid of it for $165 all day long. So am I going to buy a house, Dan, for $150,000, pay all associated closing costs, transfer tax, et cetera, only to then resell it for $165? Because the $15,000 you're putting in your mind right now as that spread turns into zero real quick once you count in all those costs and realtor fees, et cetera, right? Commissions?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Your money's gone. So what we decided to do is just back ourselves out of the equation and say, all right, look, with short sales, they're name specific. So when that approval letter comes, it's actually stating who the buyer is, and it's only going to be this buyer who's allowed to buy the house. So if it's Brian Meara, it's only Brian Meara buying this house. I can't say Dan Breslin's coming in my place. It doesn't work that way. But it does if you time it properly and have them reissue the approval letter, or even better yet, if prior to them issuing the approval letter in your name, if you know how to analyze the deal and determine your exit strategy, meaning that you know there's not going to be enough to justify buying it, certainly not putting money into it, you just want to, quote, wholesale it and get out of the way, well, that's what we perfected how to do. So we go to the bank with the bad news, good news phone call, and hey, look, bad news is this current buyer is not going to be interested in buying the house. They're going to step aside, release their interest, and we have a backup buyer for you matching the exact same amount. So the buyer that I was going to sell to would now step in my shoes, pay the $150. The bank is happy because they're netting the same amount. They issue or reissue the approval letter in their name, and our fee that we're collecting for stepping aside, what we term the release and termination of contract, which, by the way, goes on the HUD. It goes on line 104 of the HUD. Again, full disclosure. We send that into the bank, and as of the date of this recording here, this phone call, we have a 100% success and track record. It's never been denied. Now, people say, no, nothing works 100% of the time. Yeah, I get that. And I'm waiting for the day where I get a phone call or an email saying, hey, Brian, I tried your system and it didn't work. But that hasn't happened yet. We've been doing this since 2012, okay? And, again, I know for a fact it's not going to work one day, but fortunately, that day hasn't come yet. And people have asked me on many, many occasions, why? Why is that, Brian? Well, I and many other people have put a lot of thought into that. And here's the best I can come up with, Dan. The bank is going, basically, let's talk about the bank. Let's talk about whether it's Wells Fargo or Bank of America, some of the bigger ones, right? Or Chase, what have you. They're the pretender lender, right? They're the servicer. They're getting 2%, per month to service that account and make those threatening phone calls when people don't pay. The actual owner of the note, the holder of the paper, whoever owns that is the one making the decision. Whether it's Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or some private investor, somebody holds that. They're making the decision, and they're simply giving the directives to the servicer, saying, look, here's the amount minimum that we need to net, this, that, and the other terms, potential hold periods, et cetera. They're laying out to them exactly how this is going to play out. And so really they're just a monkey pushing buttons in a box, right? These services, that's all they are. So if we're able to present something that truly makes sense that they can then present to the investor, and furthermore, we're meeting their minimum net requirements. And how do we know that? Because prior to us deciding to step aside for a fee, a.k.a. wholesale to short sale, they've already told us what they would take. They've already agreed to a price. So there's no question. There's no, I wonder if the bank's going to take this. No. See, we reverse engineered the entire process, and the reason to this day a ton of short sales don't go through, Dan, even though there's not as many of them, is because people screw it up. You have your average listing agent going out there, listing a property, completely screwing it up. They're either listing it way too low, which is completely ridiculous because these buyers are going to think they're getting a deal of a lifetime. They're going to put their offers in, and they're going to get rejected, and then after the bank goes through too many buyers, they're going to foreclose. Or they're going to list it way too high, which gets in the bank's mind, guess what? This buyer obviously, the bank's going to think that it's worth a lot more money than it is. So even when a good offer comes in, it's going to be rejected because now the valuation in their system is artificially inflated, okay? So there's many, many problems and things that we've seen along the way that we've had to keep an eye out for, which is obviously working closely with these listing agents with the list price because it has to be based on real comps, and that's kind of what we teach.
And this is interesting. I know there's people listening who are probably thinking, wow, I could probably do this. And I'm of the mindset, sort of I could do this, but I also have a breadth of experience with wholesaling deals, Brian, and doing a lot of wholesale deals. I fix and flip deals, and I approach every deal like a fix and flip. But I know that my breadth of experience and the number of deals that I've closed and the number of deals in my pipeline provides me with a very keen sense of offer ranges, maybe with sellers that sellers will accept, offer ranges with buyers, cash buyers who are maybe on my list, or even MLS buyers. Just from the sheer participation of so many deals, I have a very good understanding for the numbers and where they need to be, and I hear that same understanding from your point of view. So for me to try to step in, and I'm guilty of it, the minimal number of short sales that we've done, the people I've attempted with, we listed it for too low, my offer was too low, it falls apart, it goes to foreclosure anyway, to the auction anyway. So I've experienced that, that frustration that you're kind of describing there. And I'm also at the same time saying, wow, I can understand and see the value in having somebody like you and your team rather work my deal than myself, just to leverage that experience.
Pause right there. What you just said is the key. You can see the value because, look, the reality is, people ask all the time, well, Brian, how do you market? How do you market for these? Are you sending out mailings to homeowners? Hey, guys, look, I remember I was the broke guy who didn't have a pot to piss in and couldn't even afford to do a postcard campaign, all right? I couldn't do it when I got started. Now, why, to this day, all these years later, have I never done a mailing? I know a lot of people don't believe that, but it's true.
Wow.
Because I developed a realtor referral method, Dan. I basically got really good at explaining to realtors, hey, look, here's what's required to do a short sale. And by the way, as time went on, I didn't have to tell them too bad. You just kind of let people, like they say, hang themselves with their own tongue. Hey, John, have you done, how's business going? Pretty good. What about short sales? Have you done any of them? Yeah, man, I've done a few. Actually, I've done a few. How'd that go for you? Oh, man, what a pain in the ass, and it sucked, and blah, blah, blah. You can imagine, right? So they're telling me how bad they hate them, how it made their life miserable for 6 months, how many buyers walked, and I tell them basically, well, look, we have a team. We've done, hundreds and hundreds of these. We have a 95% success rate, and we're going as a buyer. We'll get you paid regardless. Oh, by the way, you'll never have to talk to the bank. I have attorneys and negotiators that can do that for you. Now, it wasn't real hard to get deals. To this day, it's not hard to get deals. I send out a weekly newsletter to over 51,000 people. I have deals coming across my desk every single week, week in, week out, many of which are around the country, so I just, refer them out to other people, and I handpick the ones that we want to work on, and that's the one we work on. That's why we only have 30-some deals today. I don't need or want any more than that. I did the 100-some deals in the pipeline, working 16 hours a day trying to manage all that. Let me tell you what, dude, it's a lot of work. It's a whole lot of work. And there's just, again, times have changed. I don't have any desire to do that anymore.
That's bringing up an interesting point, Brian. Let's talk about, the exact qualifications and process in your mind that you would look at to hand pick the short sale. So, if I were to run into someone or someone listening runs into someone, obviously we kind of want to turn it over to someone like you and have you make the selection. But by the same token, if somebody is sending out mailings or doing something like that, and they have the ability to choose neighborhoods, price points, banks that work, banks that don't work, there's ways to slice and dice information to save everybody time and money on the marketing budget, even if they are just in a referral position.
Gotcha. That's the easiest answer I can give you, in that I'm giving away this information for free in a training module on my blog. Okay, you go to investorentourage.com and it's there, and we'll repeat that later. I know we talked about that. Dan, here's the deal. There's two parameters. It's 2 and 2 only. You need to be behind on payments and have negative equity. So for anybody brand new listening to this, let me explain. If you're considering doing a short sale deal, whether you want to refer it out to somebody, a professional, myself, whoever, you need to just understand there's 2 things that always have to be at hand, or else it's not going to be worth your time. The person has to be behind on payments. It doesn't have to mean they didn't pay for a year or 2 years, but they have to be 1 full payment behind on the first mortgage of the property, okay? If they're current on the first, but they can't make the second, doesn't matter. That doesn't qualify. They have to be 1 full payment, 31 days behind on the first mortgage, all right? Why? Because if they're not behind, right, the bank won't consider a short sale. Now, I know a lot of people who are educated will reference the National Standard Short Sale Policy, which was approved by the FHFA, which is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, in 2011, and that basically stated one of the many tenets is that you can now be approved for a short sale when you are not behind on payments if you have a justifiable hardship that is permanent in nature. Now, I know that's a lot of lingo, but here's the point. My partner in my product who helped me create Flip for Profits was instrumental in giving credit as co-architect, major contributor of that bill. So I know that bill very intimately. I know the guy who helped write it, okay? Now, why am I telling you this? Because that applies, number 1, only to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and number 2, I've never seen it done. Because, look, Dan, at the end of the day, if you are still paying your mortgage, why would the lender have any incentive to cut you a break and discount 10, 20, 30, 40% off the balance? They're not in a position of being threatened. You're paying them every month as agreed. Why would they agree if Brian Meara came along to whack off 10, 20, 30% and sell to me so I can profit off it? I wouldn't do that.
Yeah, not a chance.
No way. That's why they don't do it. So you have to be behind on payments. Part 2 is you have to have negative equity. All that means is you have to owe more than what the house is worth. Your mortgage has to be greater than what it can sell for. Now, here's the key, including all closing costs, all right? People could say, well, look, my house is worth $200,000 and I owe $200,000. Okay, all right. I guess it's not a short sale. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true, because let me tell you something. It's going to take an average of around 10% to sell that house. You got 6% to the realtor alone. Depending on the state you live with, transfer tax, closing costs, et cetera, you figure on an average of 10%, which is what we like to use, that's an extra $20,000. Well, if the seller doesn't have that $20,000 to bring to the table, and they're behind on their mortgage payments, and by the way, if they're a month or 2 or 3 behind and can't pay the mortgage on the house they live in, do you think they have $20,000 sitting in a checking account? So I'm telling you right there, that will be negative equity. They do not have the money, and that qualifies. So it could be right up to the line like that, Dan. It could be literally right up to the line, But as long as there's negative equity, which means they owe more than it's worth, and they can't pay the mortgage, or they're at least 1 month behind, there you go. Now, that's at a very 1,000-foot level of what qualifies, what doesn't. We then break it down and we get into 16 specific questions, which I won't get into now, but there's what we put together what's called a qualifying questionnaire. There are 16 questions that we need answered when we're analyzing a deal, and we need two sets of comps, comparable sales, which we, ask a realtor to run in that local area. Now, here's the thing. Any short sale is going to have to be listed. One of the bank requirements to this day is that the house has to be listed if it's a short sale. So you're going to need to involve a real estate agent regarding, all right? So that agent, whether the one who's already has it listed or who's going to list it, we ask them to go onto their MLS, run us two sets of comps. We want to know what are the low comps so we can kind of formulate an investor offer. Apples to apples. Don't send me a one-bedroom condo, comp when we're looking at a 3.2 SFR, right? Let's keep apples to apples. And, we'd like to say go back 6 months in time within 1 mile of the subject property, and let's see what things are selling for. We take a look, and we look at the 3 lowest comps, again, apples to apples, and we formulate an average. And then we generally will go in, if it's below $100,000, we take about 65% and that start our offer on that. So on $100,000, if the 3 lowest comps averaged $100,000, we would probably start off at 65. If it's, anything higher, 150, 200 and up, we generally go 80%. So if the 3 lowest comps stand were averaging 200,000, we would probably start at 160, just to give you some rough numbers, okay? So again, everything we do, there's nothing by chance. There's nothing just, let's just throw an offer in and see what happens. No, this is mathematics. This is calculated, which again is why I believe we have the success that we do.
Would there be a requirement, or do those low cash comps have to be cash sales, Brian? I mean, or what about a neighborhood that's like all mortgage finance deals?
It means nothing. That doesn't matter at all, because here's why. The reason we look at comps specifically, and I told you about the low comps and how we come up with our offer, but we also want to know the average comps. Now, notice I didn't say high. I didn't say high comps. I don't want to say, what's on the low end, what's on the high end. I want to see the average comps, meaning I want to see what are these homes really selling for. In other words, if you had let's just say a cash buyer, for an example, come in and want to buy the house on a 30-day quick sale value, what's it going to take to really move this home quick? Again, in today's market, in its current condition with putting no work into the house. Well, we want to know, Brian, hey, look, here's one here, here's one here, here's one there. And then what we do, Dan, is we look at the two sets of comps. And so we get an average of the low, we get an average of the average, if you will, and we want to look for a minimum of a $20,000 spread between those two figures. So if the 3 lowest comps are coming in, let's say, to make the math easy, you got a 95, 100, and 105, all pretty similar to the subject property. Well, real quick to analyze, that's $100,000 on average. Now we run 3, we got a 115, a 120, and a 125, right? Just to play funny. That's average of 120. Well, that would work. We see $20,000 between the average of the low and the average of the average. People say, that's not much of a spread. Yeah, I get that. But look, here's the point. You have $20,000 right there. And now remember, if it's at $100,000 on the low, we're coming in at 65%, which means we're coming in at 65. Now you got another 35. So on paper, we're sitting at $55,000. Well, I'll wholesale that out and assign it for $5, $10, $15,000 all day long. So there's more than enough money in there to play. And if we're lucky and we get it closer to our other end, we'll actually buy it. We'll ride out any hold periods, and then we'll resell it and flip it. Again, holding it for however long we legally have to. Or we'll put some money into it, do a minor rehab on it, and resell it and make an even larger profit. And now we're going to sell it closer to the higher end of the scale. You see what I mean? So we do truly, or part 4, we would actually buy it and hold it in our inventory. What we've been doing and teaching anymore is actually how to, hold back a note and, become the bank yourself and getting into some, paper. But the point is this, we have 4 legitimate exit strategies with every deal we look at. So people say, some skeptics may want to say, initially looking upon this theory and say, well, Brian, if you're just going to go in every deal looking to wholesale it out, you're not really, buying that and you have no intention to buy it. You're just wholesaling them all out. No, that's not true. We actually do go in with a completely open mind, knowing that we have 4 distinct exit strategies. We can buy it and resell it after any hold period. We can buy it and rehab it, put money into it and resell it. We can buy it and hold in our inventory, or we can release our interest for a fee, a.k.a. wholesale it. So we do have 4 very distinct exit strategies. And, obviously, because the entire thing in the short sale is one big negotiation, we have absolutely no way, shy of having a crystal ball, of knowing what that bank's figure is going to come in at Therefore, I can't tell you what my exit strategy is going to be at the beginning. I can't tell you that to the end until we have all the figures in hand, right? So, that's kind of how we look at each deal. We do know that we have in front of us on our plate many different options, and that's how we price our offers accordingly. Going in with the biggest option and then leading down to what you might want to say the worst case scenario, just having to step aside, wholesale out, and release your interest for a fee, which, by the way, is not a bad deal. We average $12,000 on that nationwide. So to step aside and pick up $12,000 for a house you never had to buy, which, by the way, in our entire system, we don't even see these houses. I don't go out and see these houses. I don't meet the sellers, and I don't talk to the banks. So, and then be able to sell it, and get paid for not selling it, that's a pretty hands-off operation, man.
Yeah, and that brings up an interesting point, and I think this might be along the lines of kind of the trend. So I don't know, did you notice back in 05, or not 05, but 07, 09, and, back in the heyday, people, like you said, were double closing, making $60,000 on a deal, and now we're looking at a $12,000 average for something that you're calling a release and termination fee. Do you believe or do you see or witness like maybe these release and termination fees are viewed as maybe a little more like reasonable by the investor and those improving? Like, hey, the guy's making $15,000. He's not making $60 on a property we agreed to sell for $100. The guy's making $12 and we agreed to sell it for $100. So from the bank's perspective, are these release and termination fees in somewhat of a reasonable place where maybe that's kind of like why that's?
Yes. To answer your question, yes. I do think that's a part of it. I think a very large part of it is that they know that we went in as a buyer. We tried our best to get them to give us a good deal, justifying us to buy it, to put our work into it, to improve the property. Obviously we're going down to Home Depot, Lowe's, whatever. We're keeping the economy going, but it just didn't work out. So for all the work and the negotiators and all the people on our team, we want to get paid for releasing our interest. And by the way, in the example we gave before, Dan, where I got it at $150 approved and the guy just paid $165, on average, those houses are retailing at $200. So he's getting $35,000 off that price, like just by buying the house from me, or by me stepping aside, allowing him to buy a house thanks to the work that I did for clearing title, or like what Jeff likes to say, for achieving free and clear marketable title. Well, there's a cost associated with that because guess what? Getting back to the past, what people used to say and what a lot of uneducated people used to think, well, Brian, how can one house be worth two different values on the same day? That's not possible. Well, yeah, it is possible. Because, see, in the first transaction, when we were buying the house, when the house came to us, it was over-leveraged, there was more money owed than what it was worth, and frankly, unsellable in its current condition, not sellable. So what we did is we achieved free and clear marketable title. We negotiated with any and all lien holders, got them all to agree to certain amounts that we could actually sell the house, and there's a value in that. Now, it looks like the economy is dictating that's an average of $12,000 for that service, and we're happy with that. Do you do 2-3 of those a month? That's not a bad little living,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that said, with the trend,
if that's around $30,000 a month, give or take the last I counted, that's not a bad little deal,
Yeah, if you can keep it going. I mean, grossing that, paying off the team, it's a pretty solid, substantial monthly income.
Man. It's not $60,000 a deal doing 10 a month. Those days, I will be the first to admit, are over. But you don't forget, to run a short sale business, to have a target market area that you're marketing to, whether you're just marketing to the realtors as I've always done, or actually doing marketing, which opens up a whole new world if you're actually willing to spend some marketing dollars, not even mention what you can do in Target online today through targeted ads on Facebook and things of that nature, you can actually still run a nice business,
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. You call it the short sale business as opposed to a lot of people are, working a day job and trying to do a short sale deal once every 3 or 5 months or something. So, I mean, that's key is definitely approaching it as a business. One of the things I do want to touch on is along with the trend in the short sales, obviously there were many more and, in my opinion, and I'm not necessarily educated or following along, but I guess that other people assume the same thing. We're coming off of, a time period in history where anybody could get a mortgage and there were frivolous mortgages. I mean, you remember the amount of advertising you would see on television for refinances and people were getting, inflated appraisal values. Then the market came down. So obviously anybody like in my position who's not specialist in short sale would think, oh, there must have been a ton of these mortgages that were over leveraged. And now the economy's getting better. The price point's coming back. Brian Meara has done a ton of short sales along with a ton of other investors nationwide. There must be a limited and waning supply, especially the way you described your pipeline. Are there any indications that that's going to continue and we're going to reach some like minimal baseline short sale type of foreclosure activity? Or are there any other indications where, maybe we would see more short sales coming up, Brian?
And that's a really interesting topic because I'm reading a lot about that recently. And I still, subscribe to many things in the distressed market. I like to read Housing Wire, DS News, things of that nature. And let me tell you what, there are many, many people, very well-respected people who are saying that short sales are going to make a comeback in the next year or so. A lot of reasons behind that. Number one, not getting into any of these doomsday, people saying the dollar's going to collapse and all that. That's a whole other topic. But, aside from the extreme, there are a ton of mortgages that were written with adjustable rates that are resetting over the next 18 to 24 months. And in a large percentage of those markets, there's already been a flattening off of the equity, of the rise in equity for these homes. So they're not appreciating anywhere near the value that they were, or the rate at which way they were, if at all. Now, if you add a rate increase, because a lot of the adjustables, again, that were written, which are going to reset, the majority of them late 2015, which is right where we're at now, through 2017, that's why a lot of people then are predicting that there's going to be a comeback. Now, is it going to revert back and be an absolute Wild West like it was in 2007, 8, 9? No, I highly don't think so. But I do think there has the potential to be a big resurgence in short sales to a level where there's going to be a whole lot more than there are now, especially in key markets. Now, that being said, I think that at the same time there's a security in short sales, meaning you have to understand there have always been short sales historically and statistically, and there always will be. Because here's why. People, now you correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason there's short sales is because people can't pay their mortgage or they choose not to pay their mortgage. And until we can figure out a way in this country to stop cancer, job loss, and divorce, you're always going to have short sales. They're never going to go away. People are not going to stop getting divorced and not knowing what the hell to do with the house and this and that and that. And, they just stop paying it. Well, there's a short sale. But by the way, divorce attorneys are an excellent referral source.
Do you have any kind of a statistic, Brian, for, how many mortgages, I've heard somewhere, most mortgages that go into foreclosure are like within the first 2-3 years or something. So it's like a lot of times people bid off more than they could chew on an FHA loan or something of that nature. And then, the divorce or the job change or the death in the family or illness and things of that nature. Usually it seems like, I don't really know the statistic, but would you have any insight on that?
What do you mean specifically?
As a general rule, do people who go in foreclosure, does that foreclosure typically happen within like the first year of a mortgage being taken out or the first 3 years of mortgage taken out?
I don't know of any statistics on that. What I can tell you from experience is that it's generally a few years in, and it was always caused by a life circumstance. There's always a reason that it happened. Because remember, every single short sale, one of the things that has to accompany that short sale, Dan, is a hardship letter, okay? And I can't tell you how many hundreds and actually thousands I've read because, again, even the deals that didn't work or the ones that we didn't do, they come across my desk, and the hardship letters are always the same. And that's why I referenced a few different life events earlier, such as job loss, illness, cancer, et cetera, divorce. They're the three big ones. It always happens around a circumstance. There's all ends of the spectrum. There's people who just took out, the new couple who got their house and, they put virtually no money down and a few months into it, one cheats on the other one, next thing you know, they get divorced and there's no money and there's no equity in the house, right? Or, it happens they've had the house for 10, 15 years. You would think 20 years that they were nearly close to paying it off or had built up a ton of equity, but over all these years they pulled out, HELOC after home equity line and there's just nothing left because they had to put the kids through college and refinance, pay off credit cards and put in a swimming pool, and the next thing you know, they have no equity or they're negative equity. Or the adjustable interest rates who went up. And by the way, that's just one part of the equation. Yeah, they don't do the loans like they used to anymore. And I think you mentioned this before, like the ninja loans, right? No income, no job, no assets, where they just go in and, sign your name and you get no money down. Obviously, those days are over. But when you take a look at the Freddie Mac programs where you only have to put down 3%, or obviously FHA at 3.5%, you're walking a very close line there, man. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no kidding.
You're walking a very fine line. If there's even the slightest hiccup, you're a candidate for a short sale. And unfortunately, life offers a lot of hiccups, right?
You're right about that.
So they're always going to be there, man. And it's, in my office in Princeton, in New Jersey where I have my license, I get the inter-office email from Keller Williams showing all the new listings that come through every week. And there was a very solid run where probably 30-40% of all those new listings that were coming out were short sales. And now it's down to maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 a week, sometimes none. So they've slowed down, and I see that in my own market. But guess what? You also have to know that things are changed dramatically and drastically just by changing the geographic location. So if you were to go into North Jersey, where some of the people that I work with and some ex-coaching students and mentoring students, people I've closely, worked with, just an hour and a half north of me in North Jersey, there's short sales everywhere, man. I mean, they're 50-60% of certain markets where they're just everywhere. People are cleaning house. Now, is that in my backyard? No. But that's what I mean. In certain portions of Florida, there are pockets of high short sale activity. And obviously, New Jersey is one of the, leading states, unfortunately, as far as negative equity and foreclosure and short sales. They always have been. But
Brian, we're kind of approaching the top of the hour now, so I want to follow up with a couple more questions here as we wrap up. Do you have any good books, recommendations, real estate, business, professional, self-improvement? What will be the top 3 that come to mind for you?
Well, one I'm rereading right now is Pitch Anything by Oren Klaff. Okay, kind of a weird name, Oren, O-R-E-N, Klaff, K-L-A-F-S, called Pitch Anything. This book basically gets into the psychology of everything, and he gets into a topic that he likes to call frame control. And frame control is pretty much how one human being interacts with another. For example, there's a power frame. So if you get pulled over by a cop and he's walking up to your window, you kind of know who's in control right there, right? Because he's exerting a power frame, and your frame is being absorbed into that power frame. And so these power frames, or these frames, if you will, in frame control, exist in every aspect of our life and with every human interaction we have, whether it's with our spouse, our children, the mailman, et cetera, et cetera. And it's just an awesome, it was a huge eye-opener for me, okay? Another book that I'm coming up on reading again come January, which is coming up soon, would be How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Yeah, it's been around forever, and yeah, it's a classic, but I made a commitment years ago when I was 18 years old that I would reread that book every January. And I haven't, I'll be the first to admit, I haven't done it every year, but many years I have, where I'll pull that old book out and actually reread it. And that's a classic. I'm sure you know about that one, okay?
Nice.
And another one, for those that are interested in internet marketing, it's called .com Secrets by Russell Brunson. A lot of people, whether they're interested in just creating, different buyers lists or creating, new funnels to attract, distressed sellers or whatever aspect of real estate they're in as an agent or this, or maybe they have a side dog grooming business or whatever. If you want to attract people online and get customers online in any way, shape, or form, this book is unbelievable. And I'm not done it yet, but I'm probably about 3/4 through it, and it's absolutely amazing. It's called .com Secrets by Russell Brunson.
I know that's one of the things that you've leveraged your business, and I do a lot of that in my own business where we're kind of like on the internet and we're showing up in a lot of different places, and definitely is a new way to supercharge your business. I don't know for the new person, coming right out that, but, hey, it worked for you. You put that commitment level with the investor accountability videos as they were kind of from your perspective, but, I'm sure a lot of people got some pretty interesting insights, and you ended up building up a network of over 51,000 people. So, hey, I'm with that. I'm actually going to order that book immediately. I'm kind of wondering if I already have it on my shelf back at the office, but I live 700 miles away from my office, so I can't check. It's easier to order another one.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have any final jewels of wisdom to share with our listeners, Brian?
The jewels of wisdom. That's an interesting question. I think getting back to my story, and I know we touched on this before, the biggest piece of wisdom I can impart, if there, so to speak, is that you have to make a decision, right? I mean, here we are, we're in December, Dan, we're coming up on the end of the year, and we're at that time of year where everyone's starting to think about their New Year's resolutions. And am I going to do this? Am I going to do that? What am I going to start doing? What am I going to stop doing, right? Get in shape, quit smoking, blah, 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 the whole list. Well, when it comes to business, when it comes to finances, making a decision of what you're going to do and then putting your whole heart and soul into it, there's going to be that beginning phase when nothing's happening, when you're not seeing results, where you're questioning yourself, but it's that determination and that commitment to say, look, here's what I'm deciding to do, and even if I fail, I'm going to give it absolutely everything I have. Because the funny thing is when people make that decision and they put their heart and soul and blood and sweat and tears into something, a very high percentage of the time they end up succeeding, or it leads them to another area where they can then be successful in. But the problem is with humans, myself included, is that when we don't see that, instant gratification, when we don't get those instantaneous results, we end up questioning ourselves and questioning the process and questioning everything we're doing and start looking left and looking right. And the whole been there, done that, I know. Trust me, I know. That's one of the biggest traps we can fall into. And even to this day, as I'm reinventing myself and reinventing different, aspects of my business and things that we're pursuing, I need to continually remind myself that, hey, look, you set your goal, you decide what you're going to do, and you put everything you have into it, and you just let the chips fall where they may. And that's just something that, in 41 years of my life, that's carried me through and has helped me come back from some tremendous, downfalls. I've been bankrupt. I almost died of cancer. I've been through a hell of a lot, man. Divorced, and I've always bounced back. And I've bounced back bigger and greater, I believe, due in large part to that mindset.
How can our listeners get some more information about you, Brian?
The best way is just to go to my blog, my website. It's Investor Entourage, so just like it sounds, INVESTOR, Entourage, ENTOURAGE.com. And what I did is I put, we're not selling slip-free profits anymore in the product. We did come out with a 2.0 in 2013, but Dan, number one, because of the slowdown in the short sales, are not on every corner anymore. Obviously, there's not a lot of people looking to buy products on how to do them, so we stopped selling it for that reason. Plus, we had to update a few of the videos and paperwork, and so we stopped selling it. But you can still download training module number 2, which is how to analyze a deal, how to quickly analyze a deal. And we have a spreadsheet that you can get for free and download the entire training module, which is a video, and that's right on our site. So there's no charge for that. We give that away just as, because I'm always talking about, in the different interviews and, radio shows and different events like today, I'm talking and speaking to people. One of the things that I don't think it's never not come up, which is analyzing the deal. And people always, some of the follow-up questions or emails I would get, well, why don't you tell me a little more about analyzing the deal and those percentages, and what are those 14 or 16 questions you mentioned? Well, they're all covered in that training module. So I tell everybody now, just to make my life easier, I'm like, all right, my web guy, I'm like, look, let's just give away this training module, put it right at the front of the site, and we'll just give it away. So InvestorEntourage.com is the best way.
Nice, and I will include that in the show notes. Brian, I really appreciate you coming out, giving us an hour or so of your time and your knowledge.
Thanks for having me, man.
Short sales, yeah. And thank you all for listening to this episode of the REI Diamonds podcast. Are you enjoying what you hear here? Maybe you know someone else who'd also appreciate this episode. The best compliment you can give me, and maybe the best help you can give that friend, would be to send them that episode that they'd be interested in. You can also sign up to receive email updates of new weekly interviews at www.reidiamonds. As a bonus for signing up, I'll send you my special report titled 7 Sources of Off-Market Deals. That website, again, is www.reidiamonds.com. And you can also find us in the iTunes app. Just search REI Diamonds and click subscribe. Until next time, this is Dan Breslin signing off.
Thanks for listening to the REI Diamond Interview. To receive the REI Diamonds newsletter and interview monthly, sign up now at www.reidiamonds.com.